everybody. It's the Working Fans Podcast with the man they call Dave and AJ Strangebrew. And today we're talking worst ideas from Vince McMahon. I like to point this out. It's kind of interesting. I was thinking about this afterwards. Like, Vince has had a lot of notorious bad ideas, right?
Yeah, but he had WrestleMania.
He had WrestleMania. Like, I mean, what the fuck? Like, I guess it's like, it's not like we really do celebrate this man's good ideas, too. I don't know. Besides Mania, though, I mean, it's kind of funny when you look at it, right? Because was the Attitude Era really his idea?
No.
Was Hogan his idea? That was kind of like Hogan was doing that by himself in AWA. He was smart enough to run with it.
He doesn't even get the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble is Pat
Patterson. He actually said it was stupid, I think.
Yeah.
I think he told Dick Ebersol, Pat, tell him you're stupid.
That'll never
idea.
work.
So,
Maybe Saturday night's main event?
that might. I don't know. I'm sure he does, but he definitely had WrestleMania, so we can't. And he had the idea of taking things national. So, Scott, the higher power, which you might remember when that was where it was rumored it was going to be Christopher Daniels was going to be the guy that Undertaker.
But Vince felt he was too small.
So Vince has put himself in the spot there.
Yes.
It was me, Austin. Katie Vick. That is where Kane apparently accidentally killed a woman, and then Triple H slept with her corpse.
See, and this is something we have to do is that sometimes it's not necessarily Vince's ideas, but what he allows to get on TV.
Right.
Because I'm sure somebody else wrote that. I hope that Vince wasn't sitting there going, I got an idea.
Well, there was that rumor that Vince had the incest idea where he wanted to have like Stephanie. He was going to be the father of Stephanie's baby.
Well, you'll hear more about that later.
Scott's got the invasion. I don't think the invasion was necessarily a stupid idea, but the execution was horrible.
Yeah, the idea itself was good. It was how he ran through it.
But I do like his next one. Whatever the fuck Kevin Dunn does to make these shows unwatchable. I got Mike Caldwell here. He's got Dr. Isaac Yankem, and then he's got Fake Razor and Diesel. What I like is that Glenn Jacobs, Kane, has made this list twice.
I wish that I could fully agree with him on those, but as bad of ideas as those are they really Vince's worst ideas?
Well, continuing on, he has the Gobbledygooker.
There you go.
And then,
now you're going.
And then I like this one. The XFL ...
The Rock bought it.
It's a good point.
We'll see what happens.
And then the last one, again, I'm going to go with like Scott, kind of similar too. He has the buying of WCW. I'm not going to say that was a bad idea, but the execution was rather poor.
The buying is fantastic because the buying gives you all of the footage, and for what they paid for it, what they ended up paying was barely even anything in the drop.
Oh yeah, business-wise, it was such a smart fucking.
And they get that whole library of 20 years of freaking wrestling, for Christ's sakes. I mean,
yeah, it's funny. I can't fault them for that. And as a fan, I remember like when WCW got bought out. Initially, I was kind of happy it was WWE. I'm like, oh, we're gonna get all these dream matches. Oh man, this is gonna be so great. But that's not what happened, was it?
Yeah, we didn't get any of those dream matches because anybody who those dream matches would be involved with usually waited out their contract.
Yeah. And at that time, they had already pissed through the angle.
Yeah, because Vince would have offered them about 10% of what they were actually making on those WCW contracts.
Jesse from New Hampshire. He's got Katie Vick. He's got Crown Jewel, morally.
He also has not running a pay-per-view in New Hampshire.
Hell in a Cell pay-per-view every year instead of making the match itself special.
Absolutely.
I think you're going to like this one. Screwing Brett.
Oh, yes. I mean, I'm not going to get into his personal life with Brett. With what they did between the two of them is not my business. I'm not judging men.
Okay, Jesse's got a cold-blooded one right here. You're going to appreciate this.
Oh, no.
Owen Hart's weak-ass harness.
The sad part is I knew where he was going before you told me. And by the way, I absolutely love that one.
Jake Rule, ECW brand after the success of One Night Stand. Again, I think that's more the execution, but you know what? I mean, unfortunately.
I like that other fans are actually calling out the Jake Rule.
Yeah.
That's nice. It's actually caught on to call it the Jake Rule. That's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is good stuff. I got Mike Flynn with a list here. Invasion angle. But Mike does add, it's still incredible how badly he botched a layup.
It should have been easy.
The higher power angle makes it again.
Absolutely.
Letting Kevin Nash and Scott Hall leave for WCW. Katie Vick again makes the list. And here's what we haven't
Although
heard
in
about.
fairness, when they left at separate times. They did not actually leave together holding hands.
That's just true. No one thinks they left together holding hands. And the limo explosion. I remember that one. Yeah.
The death, yes, the death of Vince, which happened to coincide with the death of Chris Benoit's family.
It did, right?
Yeah,
That's why we had to bring him back.
Maybe just bad timing.
Yeah, it was bad timing. Zach St. John, he's got Katie Vick. We're gonna have to put Katie Vick in the finals.
Okay,
here.
First of all, I think you're forgetting to mention something.
This is St. John's favorite.
This is St. John's favorite baby boy. Yes.
He's got Katie Vick. Here's a good one: the Brawl for All.
If that doesn't make any other lists, I'm very disappointed.
I don't think it does. Fake Diesel and Razor. WBF.
Nice.
Unsuccessful invasion angle. At least he did call it the unsuccessful invasion angle. I'm going to say that that Brawl for All is a good one because
Brawl for All is a great one.
Right,
Ruined the career of Dr. Death Steve Williams.
Yeah.
You had legit people. First of all, there were no actual real rules to it, other than the fact that you put them in oversized boxing gloves, wrestlers into boxing gloves.
Right.
And you didn't, first of all, it's supposed to be a brawl for all. So it should have been more of an MMA style where they were actually able to do all the above. And if you are going to allow that, you don't put them in boxing gloves where you can't grab each other.
That's fair point. Now I'm going to give you my list next. I got Fake Diesel and Razor either. Because I mean, I remember I was actually wondering what the hell was going on.
I thought that was a great angle and really got over that heel Jim Ross.
Heel Jim Ross was great. I actually did like it.
I like heel Jim Ross because it's more like his actual real personality.
It was actually his real personality. He came out like shitting on Vince McMahon and like, oh, they put me in a toga. You got to look good in a toga, JR. Still remember that.
Now that we've been able to listen to his podcast, we see that wasn't heel Jim Ross. That was actually just Jim Ross.
Jim Ross being Jim Ross, man. I left a great job for the NFL Atlanta Falcons to wear a stupid toga. I used to love it when he didn't announce it. He'd call out Vince. This was not far from the truth. He's like, Vince wouldn't know that move. He'd just go, ha, 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 oh my, what a move.
What a move.
WBF, I had that as well. Here's the one, Gobbledygooker. Now, this isn't really Vince's idea, but he okayed it, so I'm going to put it down. The Trucity, the Ultimate Warrior's way of life. Whatever that nonsense bullshit was.
Okay, I think that if you're going to put down that, you might as well just put the Ultimate Warrior, period.
Hey, he made a lot of money with Warrior, so
whatever.
I will say Vince Wrestling God. Well, also make my list.
That almost made my list.
Yeah, I can't imagine that really did a lot of good for them. So,
all right, so we'll go to my list next. My list has something that almost came to fruition but didn't quite. It has the gold dust implants on it.
Right.
At one point, and many people have talked about this, including Dustin Rhodes and Bruce Pritchard, how at one point Vince McMahon had the idea that he wanted to actually pay for and to give Dustin Rhodes breast implants as gold dust. That would have been tremendous.
Oh, I mean, he would have done his father and everybody proud.
Everybody. Cody would be bragging on him.
Oh, my God. The tits on my brother.
Exactly. I got one for you that I haven't heard on anybody else's list. I heard the screw job. That's definitely a bad one. But to me, the allowing Bret Hart to film that documentary at the same time as you're doing the screw job, that to me seems like the bad idea, that to let another separate company that has no actual affiliation with the WWE.
I have to say, though, and I'm a Bret Hart fan way back. I love the guy. But I do have to say, it did turn into the evil Mr. McMahon character, which made him a shit ton of money.
Yeah, and it absolutely did. But I still believe that is not a good idea to have an independent company filming as you're screwing someone over.
I agree. Isn't it funny, though, that all that taught us was the guy who got screwed over ended up having bad luck and struggled with his career and ended up having a stroke. And the guy who did the screwing ended up making like billions and becoming even more richer.
It's incredible. My third one on my list is one that I didn't hear on anybody else's list. Ending the Undertaker's streak.
Interesting.
I think that that's one of the worst ideas ever. I think they should have just left it intact. And if you were going to do it, use it to get over somebody who actually needs to get over. Brock Lesnar did not need to beat The Undertaker. It did nothing for him. It did nothing for The Undertaker, and did nothing for that WrestleMania.
Yeah, I agree. I do think Brock got a little bit of buzz off of that at the time, but I don't think it was something Brock needed per se. And I don't think Brock is still riding that out.
I also have one that didn't fully come into play, but always was a little borderline. I have the incest angle with Vince McMahon and Stephanie. They always seem just a little too close for my liking.
Yeah, his bosom daughter.
Yeah.
My sweet Stephanie.
Yes. Made me a little uncomfortable. Being a parent and having a daughter, there are certain things that you just don't cross, and that to me was one of them. And my last one, and this is one personally, and I don't know how much Vince had to do with it, but it did happen on his watch, and I think it ended up blowing up one of the competitors and making them even larger. However, it pissed off the crowd to a point where it was almost nuclear. Sheamus over Daniel Bryan in 18 seconds at WrestleMania. I think it did completely the opposite of what Vince was going for. I think Vince was just trying to bury Daniel Bryan. And I think that Bryan Danielson that you see today, as large as he is, part of that is because of what they did to him at that WrestleMania in 18 seconds.
I will agree wholeheartedly with that. I don't think people look back at that enough. That attempted screwing that they did of Bryan Danielson is what turned that crowd around. It erupted that yes chant, which never died. Even to this day, they're still chanting yes. He's in another company now. He's back to Bryan Danielson. We're still chanting yes.
Still follows him. And I'm telling you, that is one of the worst ideas that they ever had, was to take somebody because they didn't see it and just bury him in 18 seconds.
I think that they thought it was all going to be about getting Sheamus over. This was going to be huge for Sheamus, but it did just the opposite.
It did the opposite. Sheamus's career hasn't been the same since either. And I love Sheamus. I think Sheamus has had a very good career. Right. But has his career ever reached that point again where he's been that hot?
No. Honestly,
I'm surprised that didn't make any other list, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that's all forgotten because how
successful he's been.
Yeah.
I'm still bitter about it. It still pisses me off to think about it. So
it's so funny. I do remember that moment. I was so pissed off that too. I think Vince, do have to give him credit. He's had some bad ideas where he has turned it around.
Sometimes it's in spite of himself. The Attitude Era was in spite of himself. The Attitude Era, he hated ECW. He hated that style of wrestling. He thought it was straight garbage. And he only started to do it because he wanted
to beat in the ratings.
Exactly.
He threw his hands up and said, it
was basically, okay, well, whatever. We'll try it. It wasn't him going, yeah, that's a good idea.
We have to have Katie Vick in the finals because I think it made everybody else's lists but ours.
Yeah.
I think the Fake Diesel and Razor made a ton of lists. The Invasion Angle made a lot of lists, but I'm not going to put everybody's list in there. So I'm going to go with Fake Diesel and Razor. Because I think the Invasion Angle was a good idea.
I can't do the Invasion Angle because the idea itself was not bad. It was the way it was implemented.
Fake Diesel and Fake Razor is clearly a bad idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw it out there. Even though it was only Zach, I'm going to give it to Zach. I'm going to say Brawl for All needs to be in that final three.
I was pissed that I didn't put the Brawl for All when Zach said that. And I'm not going to lie to you. I thought about actually saying Brawl for All once he said that. Yeah. But I stayed true to my list, unfortunately. And while I'm very happy that I got the documentary and that I got Bryan Danielson in there, Brawl for All was just such a garbage idea.
Yeah, because you ended up hurting a lot of actual wrestlers.
Yeah, people legitimately got hurt. The Godfather got a legitimate injury. You had the end of the career for Dr. Death.
Yeah, and we set this whole thing up by taking Bart Gunn, who won it, as your legit tough guy, and you put him in there with Butterbean.
Instead
he didn't make it even he wasn't allowed to wrestle, or if he
had to box him.
Yeah, and this ended up with Bart getting knocked out in a few seconds.
So here's the funny thing is, I don't know if you're aware of this or not. They actually fought again in Japan.
Did they?
Yeah, they ended up fighting, and it was a much closer match. And the reason why is in Japan they made it more of an MMA style.
Mm-hmm.
So Bart Gunn was able to move. He didn't have the heavy boxing gloves on. He had the MMA style gloves on.
I imagine Bart probably learned too, because I know Bart. Part of the thing was Bart was knocking people out, and I think he got in his head that he could
just go out there and knock someone out. Whereas that's all Butterbean did. Butterbean was just a big guy who you come in at him, he hits you with a haymaker, and you're knocked out.
And Butterbean was a tough guy, but Butterbean at that point had been doing actual real boxing for quite a while, and Bart didn't have that same experience. So
No.
what do you think was going to happen? I mean,
Yeah, it was just an all-around bad idea. You put him into a circumstance that was no win.
I think we got. I want to argue with Fake Diesel and Fake Razor a little bit too, because that's an interesting one. What good did we think was going to happen out of that?
I don't think that it was necessarily that it wasn't a bad idea. I agree with you 100% that it was a bad idea. I just don't think in the great scheme of things that it did enough damage to be one of his worst ideas. Okay. I think people just didn't give a shit one way or the other. To me, that's not catastrophic.
Okay, so
whereas what he did with like the Brawl for All is catastrophic.
What's the worst idea then, Katie Vick or the?
Once again, the reason why Katie Vick and the same reason why the Hand or Dr. Handy the same reason none of that stuff makes my list is because it doesn't affect viewers. Viewers didn't turn away because of it. People didn't not watch the show because of it. They didn't think it was horrible. Nobody got hurt. So to me, Brawl for All is the clear winner out of that group. If you want to come to me and say that I hit for great horrible ideas, I'm more likely to go for your WBF, which opened the door for Luger to come in and just was horrible. Lord knows how much Ico Pro they got stuck with.
Who would you say is the worst idea though out of the other two?
The other two,
Fake Diesel, Katie Vick.
Katie Vick is just in such bad taste.
Okay, so that'd be our number two. It's funny you said turn viewers away because that reminded me it wasn't his idea, but I believe whether it was Bischoff or whoever who had the idea to tell Tony Schiavone, which they thought was going to be a good idea.
Oh, God, if you want to go through, we can do this next time. We can go over Bischoff's top 5 bad ideas. He gets credit for the NWO, and he gets credit for Hogan coming in, but he's got a shitload of bad ideas.
Yeah, and some of those ideas were really good, turned into bad ideas. The NWO ended up being horrible towards the end.
I mean, he got a good 2-year run out of it. Yeah, because it started, 95 and ended up running through to 97 was his hottest year.
Yeah.
So you got to it's hard to say that anytime you ride anything, eventually it's got to die.
Right.
Hulkamania had a great 4-year run in the 80s. Eventually it dies.
I think the problem was, though, they kept that going in 99. So it was 2 years after the fact that thing was already dead.
Well, that's what I'm saying is eventually, and when you water it down by having 50 members, it's hard to.
I do think, though, telling the audience Mick Foley's going to win the world title. That's going to put some butts.
That was a bad idea.
Yeah.
That was not understanding how much your audience appreciates Mick Foley.
Yeah, loved this guy. Because they would do that stuff before. They would give away raw results and stuff. And probably they didn't get any backlash at it. And everything was probably positive and people didn't like it. It's fine. They didn't lose any viewers. They were hot. But, man, I mean, that was a show they were actually, I think Foley put up, they were actually winning at one point in the ratings. They had a good storyline going, and then, boom. People turned
Dave,
away.
I'm not going to lie to you. That's the best idea you've had all day, and I think that we should end on that.